the list of all the
Understood.
things that we're, of
It
trying
was
to
something
get
that stuck out to me, and the reason it stuck out to me is because when I was thinking about everything, I was wondering why, because I was told that, yeah, the police station was done, but the court building wasn't done. So I was wondering why that wasn't done and who authorized that not. And I contacted someone else who explained to me that council authorizes the city manager to do the sort of thing. So he could essentially say yes on police station, no on court building.
Absolutely.
And I think, I think he does have the ability to do that, and
Through the legislation.
and quite frankly, and I trust Rob to make those decisions.
Understood.
In the end, Rob is the CEO of the city, and our job as a council is oversight and direction of that. But Rob hasn't given me, and I can only speak for myself, any reason to believe that what he's doing is not in the best interest of the city. Because, as Mr. Webb mentioned, the communication has been very fluid.
And that
Rob
was
has
the
not
next
had
question.
Discussions with them that he has not come back and updated us, at any time, which is frustrating about how all this played out tonight, because Rob hasn't done anything that this council hasn't directed him to do.
And that was my next question. Do you believe the city manager was negotiating in a positive manner for the city, and why?
I do, because I believe that Rob understands the value of having the court here. So I'll even take this a step further, and some of your listeners might end up getting upset at me over this, but I'll tell you, I directly have had those conversations with Rob, very direct, that if they're not going to negotiate, let's move let's save $70,000 a year in rent, and let's move our tax department and water department to the court building. And Rob has given me resistance on that.
Okay.
So the fact that Rob has given me resistance on my idea of saving the money and not dealing with the county because of the way they've negotiated, and as we talked before we started recording, the issues we've had with a particular business, the county is the big fish, right?
Right.
So I think the county is looking out for their best interest. I don't think the county has the best interest of Heber Heights in their mind at all. So trying to keep the best interest of the citizens of Heber Heights in my mind, and the money that we're spending that could be saved, if the county's not willing to negotiate long term, and if they're telling us they're not going to be here long term, I'd be very much in favor of looking at a cost benefit analysis of moving those two city departments here. And Mr. Schomer has told me no probably every time of the 6 or 7 times I mentioned that. So there's no reason that I believe that Rob is not negotiating on the best interests of the city, because as a former police chief, he understands the value of the court building here. And Rob's words to me is, even if a cost benefit analysis showed a little better return on the money here, what it's going to do to the police officers and the morale of the police by having to have them go someplace else, he didn't think it was worth it. So I have full confidence that Rob was negotiating on behalf of the city in the best interest of the city and the police officers.
Okay.
I have no question about that.
What was the extent of your involvement in the negotiations? Do you have a part in it, or do you delegate all that to the city manager?
So I was elected in January of 2018 at the request of Judge Pierges. I met with him for breakfast in probably March of 2018. That's when I learned of Dan Foley's position as a newly elected official. He wanted to let me know what the county was trying to pull off. And he informed me there was a group of judges that were fighting that and against it because they believed in that the ability to have a municipal court was important. And meaning, he's the administrator of the court. So when I say municipal court, I don't just mean Heber Heights. It was important for the judges, right, to have a municipal courts throughout the county, not one centralized court. And he let me know then that they were very interested in. So again, now I'm not sure what to believe, but at that time, in March of 2018, when I had breakfast with the judge, he informed me that it was the county's position. I apologize. It was some judges' position that they wanted to keep the municipal courts, but Dan Foley was very much in favor of minimizing or getting rid of the municipal courts and centralizing them all to the Rybold building downtown. That's how that discussion ended, and the judge said he would just keep me abreast of what was happening. And of course, the following November is when the election took place, and that's when Dan Foley resigned from the county commission and decided he was going to run for state rep for the area of Trotwood. So when Dan Foley left the commissioner's office, I think that solved the problem that Judge Peerges had brought up to me in our March 2018 meeting. So other than that conversation, and in fact, I was actually visiting my son in Texas because it was our spring break. So I wasn't here at the April 22nd meeting. Vice Mayor Morgan ran that meeting for me. That's the meeting. That's the only time I've even seen the judge again. Was on video of him here. And I believe in that video he mentioned Mr. Campbell, myself, and Rob, and how happy he was with our involvement and trying. So I was a little shocked to hear him say the mayor. I think he was maybe giving me a shout out, but the only time I'd ever talked to him was like 13 months prior to him being here talking in front of the council.
Do you believe, as your official capacity as mayor, that the county was out of the purchase of the building and the only thing left was a lease agreement? So essentially, do you believe that the county was done? They didn't want to buy the building because there was something mentioned by the city manager that it was on the public meeting. I'm trying to think of, it's got to be the August 20th meeting, that he said that the county's out. All they want to do is focus on a lease.
So the information so we have conflicting information.
Okay.
Because even in the information that Mr. Shaw provided this evening, Mr. Shaw said that the county administrators said that they didn't want to purchase the building, but then yet said the county commissioners they talked to said they did want to purchase the building. So even according to Mr. Shaw's own document, the administrators and the commissioners have mixed and cross signals. And then you've got a judge in the mix of that who is crossing signals. So I think when we're talking about, I think we all just have to open our eyes here and be honest with what's going on. We've got 8 council members and myself who have all publicly stated we understand the value of the court and would like to keep them here. We had an appraisal on the building to come up with a price. The building appraised for several $100,000 more than what our offer was to the county.
Which, by the way, was a bit of a shock to all of us. The actual appraisal amount came in much higher than I think any of us thought it would.
Yes. Yep.
So the city was going to charge the county less than what it appraised for.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and in fact, we all had to have that discussion because we knew how does that come back on us? It's not our money; it's taxpayers' money.
Right.
We got an appraisal at this amount, but we're willing to sell the building for several $100,000 less than the appraisal to keep the courts here.
So the discussion centered around the benefit of having the courts within Huber Heights. In other words, to our taxpayers.
At Rob's recommendation.
Why are you willing to discount that building? Well, because we feel it's important to have the courts here in Huber Heights.
Right. So that, I think, would make a lot of other folks feel better, because when it was talked about, the quote I believe was from Mr. Morgan, where he talked about the market rate. So I'm thinking, and that's for a lease. So the city is going to,
I think Mr. Morgan was talking
for a lease versus a purchase.
Right. Only if, for those 3 months for October, November, December, if the county came back to us and said we're not staying long term, then we look at a market rate lease.
Okay.
I don't think he was, at least my understanding was, he wasn't saying that we should just throw out a market rate lease to them and that's it. My understanding was, if they're only interested in the short term and all we're doing is extending to December and then they're going to move, they're going to go someplace else, then a market rate lease. And look, and that's just from a negotiation perspective. I know people might not like the word leverage, but that's what negotiation is. I mean, if you have to start somewhere, but we're not getting anything back from the county about what they even want. Based on the commissioner's statements that Mr. Shaw has brought up, based on the administrator's statements that Mr. Shaw brought up, based on the judge's statement that he's made publicly at a meeting and then publicly at another Republican meeting, I'm not sure that they know what's going on or that they even know what the long-term plan for the courts are. But it's very simple to me to look like this is, again, I hate to use the word setup, but I mean, seems to me an awful lot like they don't want to be here. They're going to build a new building with taxpayer money. The county was in an $18 million deficit.
Mm-hmm.
They raised our sales tax, and now they're going to build a new court building when we would enter into a long-term, very minimal lease here. Triple net, though, where they're responsible for the upkeep on the building, but for very, very minimal annual amount.
So would the city still sell the building to the county?
If that's what they wanted.
At this point?
But they,
Sure.
Don, correct me
We
if
would
I'm
entertain
wrong.
that.
Correct me if
Sure.
I'm wrong. They did not counter. We offered several $100,000 less than the appraisal,
Right.
and their counter was 2-year lease.
Okay.
So they didn't even counter
Matt,
the offer.
I will second that. That is exactly what was brought back to us. We went to them with the price for purchase. They turned that down, and what they were interested in was a 2-year lease. So, again, it's hard to do a 2-year lease unless you know what the ultimate goal for the county is with that building. Are they going to be here for a while? If they are, there's a lot of things we can do. A lot of different ways this council and city staff can move on that building for them. But if they're telling us, well, we don't really know.
We're in
we
limbo because the county has given no direction on what they want to do.
So
Zero direction on what they want to do, other than we don't want to buy it at your extremely discounted rate.
right.
We only want to lease it, but we're not going to tell you what the parameters of that lease are.
So
No,
that
if you
would
don't
bring
mind-
me to the question that was I believe it was brought up tonight as well. That on August 30th, Councilman Shaw asked the mayor, to write a letter to the county and ask them specifically, what do you want? And from that meeting, it stuck out to me. You said, I certainly can. And you didn't write the letter.
Yep.
And that was because you were told that the judge said, don't write that letter.
My conversation with Rob, and I don't remember the dates, my conversation with Rob, the only conversation I had with Rob about the letter was the judge asked us not to because he felt that would be detrimental to the negotiation.
And do we know why that would be detrimental to the conversation?
Well, I think if you listen to the tone and frustration
It was
expressed by Mr. Shaw specifically, his frustration with the county, if that was the, I mean, even I was aggravated. So at that point, I don't write those letters. I'd have Tony write the letter for me because he could be
Okay.
much more eloquent about that than I could, because I would be expressing my frustrations.
Sure.
So I just think that if Rob took the tone, so Rob either took the tone from the meeting about the letter, or told the judge what we were planning on doing, or if anyone from the county saw the video and saw the tone of the proposed letter and the discussion around it, they were probably like, they're coming at us guns blazing, right? Because that was the tone set by the discussion around that letter and everyone's frustration that we can't nail down the courts on what it is that they're after.
Matt, I don't think there was any council person who didn't understand that we weren't talking about sending them a nice, hey, county, how you doing? We'd like to talk to you about the courts building letter. This was a line in the sand letter.
And I can tell you
Sure.
that is absolutely right, because we had that discussion back here.
Yeah, it was basically, what are you going to do with the courts building? Are you staying or are you leaving? Because this city council, in the best interest of the citizens